Hi, everybody. Um, Today is just going to be kind of a fun, let's do a show and tell with beads thing. Thanks to my friend and student, I got this wonderful close-up camera, so I'm going to turn the camera over to that one. I'm going to turn the camera over to the plate on which I'm going to put these beads, and I'll just talk about them while I share them or show them. I've got this tray. This It's got a bunch of beads in it. It's part of one of these wonderful little plastic tray things that people um, buy to organize their stuff. And I just let my beads live together. So I'm going to show you what's living together in this tray. And in some cases where they came from. Oh, come on, focus, baby. And so on. Here it goes. That's a little better. This actually, I've got two almost identical ones. I think it's the one I got from my great auntie Marguerite, who traveled the world, in part because her children got scholarships to Reed College and lived internationally. Her daughter, my mom's cousin, married a guy who worked for the Mellon Bank in Beirut, Lebanon in the 1950s, I believe. And this is one of the wonderful things she brought back before they moved elsewhere. This is a basic, it's kind of got a screwy part in it, but it's got this gouge into it, which to some people would ruin it. Just to me makes it more interesting. It's basically a ostensibly turquoise donut shaped bead. And why don't I just start putting lots of beads on there, because what I was doing with this was getting a color theme going. And I I started with a fraction of the beads in here and ended up with as many as can possibly fit in without basically breaking it. So these are very interesting nail heads. I believe I got them from Nancy Meinhardt back in the day, and they have two holes. You'll see the back channel. That's actually a glass that is glued to a different type of glass on top. And see those hexagonal facets? Not only is it an interesting bead in itself with two holes with a fabulous color, but it's got these hexagonal facets. So I like it. What can I say? And that color kind of goes with, I'll take this off the string. Doesn't need to have string on there. That's the temporary string. It kind of reminds me of some of the colors in these beads, which are, I believe, Japanese millefiori beads that I found in an estate sale probably 20 years ago in Portland, Oregon. So, hey, why not put them together? I like the colors together. These are, oh boy, I've got to save these. Here we go. These are also special, and I'll talk about them in a minute. But these are basically really interesting. It's not from the same batch, but it's nonetheless interesting. These are ceramic beads that are made by a guy who had a studio next to where my husband worked in the 1990s on Belmont Street in about 25th and Belmont Street in Portland, Oregon in the 1990s. And they're raku fired. And, they look lumpy bumpy. Let's see if they can get into focus again. Here we go. They're kind of chance. The colors are formed by chance, the way they're done. And I could think I might characterize them as guy beads because I don't want to over genderize things, but these are not Swarovski crystals and Swarovski pearls. These are gnarly, elemental, earthy, and very dark colored, wonderfully dark colored beads. And they're not overly shiny, but they do have a sheen to them. So my taste in beads extends to those. This is a gemstone bead. It's probably moss agate. Let's see if I can get the let's see if I can bring it real close so you can see the, nope, it's not working. Oh, there we go. There is some translucency to it because that's the nature of moss agate. Moss and agate is, come on, baby. Here we go. Let's see if we can get it to focus. Nope. Okay, I won't screw around with it anymore. Moss and agate is very Pacific. Oh, there we go. That looks better. The very Pacific Northwesty. There's a beach in Oregon called Agate Beach, where you can, if you look hard enough, you can find agates, agate stones. And just like with jasper, there are lots of types of agates, and this is one of them. I might be wrong. What can I say? I'll get through a few jaunty, interesting beads. I had kind of an odd slate grayish blue color with kind of an odd series of pinks. And for some reason, I thought my grandma's necklace that she brought back from Hawaii in 1972 should go in with it because, well, because that's what beaders do. It's just, I like it. It speaks to me because I said it does. These are, oh, probably found those at a thrift store or something, or, oh, I don't even know, or an estate sale. And I believe they are half of a clasp, or half of a, basically you sew through these holes, and this part has a gouge to it on each side, so you have something else that goes in with it. But I only have this half, so I can't use it as a clasp, but I can use it for something. Why? Because it has holes. I can sew through it and call it a new thing and do what I want with it. It's a free country, right? At least in beadland. This is a wonderful, let's see if I can get it close. Givre glass, Givre. In America, we pronounce it givre, or givre, which is not the way the French would pronounce it, so my apologies. But it's an interesting old bead of subtle color, and there's layering of colors in there, and it kind of looks like that color, so it's going in the pile. This is an amber colored glass bead. It's probably not, it's not a Swarovski crystal, I don't think. These are these wonderful lampwork beads that somebody with incredibly mad, wild skills sits in front of a torch that's probably is, oh, a flame about that long, coming out of a device that's about this size of this camera here, and takes, come on, refocus, baby. Sorry, Mr. Focuser. And there it goes, and takes filament level glass, thin pieces of glass, and winds them around a mandrel. A mandrel that is a mandrel in this case is a metal rod that is coated, and you might be able to see some of the traces of the coating with white slip, which is a clay-like, a very wettish, very liquidy clay-like substance, so that the glass doesn't stick to the mandrel, the wire of the mandrel. And they wind it around it, and then they start winding it in an open fashion. So you get these, I think they're called lattice work beads. They're very intricate. They're very breakable. And when they're old, you're lucky that they're not broken. So you find them and you snag them and you cherish them and you go, oh my gosh, I'm so lucky that I have these. And yeah, they go with these too, don't they? And I kind of like having the brown in there. Hello, you know how that goes. These are brand, couple of years old. Speaking of that color range, these are brand new. Please focus, thank you. And they're wonderful because, first of all, they're projectile, and projectile things are very fun. So, so they have a distinctive shape, and they're basically two-sided. One side is the more solid fumed on metal side, and the other side is clear. So you see through the clear to that color from behind. So you're getting a lot of dynamics in one bead, or this batch of beads. So yes, I got as many as I could. These is on that odd pink end. They don't actually fit together. Some of the beads, I'll do probably a little show like this on my show and tell of beads that do interlock, but these look like they should, but they don't. And they're this odd kind of like almost a Caucasian doll flesh color. I don't know how else to describe it. I could probably come up with something even weirder, but they're cool and interesting, and they're part of that pink end of things. This was some old lady's big old Herkin earring back in the day. I only have one of them. I could, I guess, wear one of these at a time, or just wear the one that I have. Or I could pop this off and use it as a cabochon and use it in a piece of beadwork. Because isn't that fabulous? This is lucite, and what people were doing with lucite in the 50s, 1950s and 60s, late 50s, early 60s, probably, I'm guessing, is they would just drop sparkly things into the lucite while it was plastic. While it was, what do you call it? Not hard. And so this has like all kinds of really wacky, fun, interesting things that made it into the lucite. Put it into a mold and let it cool off, stuck an earring back on it, and no, somebody's grandma was wearing this back in 1963 or something, for all I know. And it's sitting in here waiting for me to do something with it. Do something with it, Teresa. Don't just talk about it. This is amber, I believe. You know, I always say I'm a little cagey about this stuff because it was sold to me as amber and it looks pretty amber-like. What's great about it is, no, it does not have an insect in it, but it's got these little reflecty things. And who knows what that was? Could have been like something that came off a pine tree or something, or whatever, back in the day, because amber is basically pine resin from literally back in the day. True amber is supposed to be millions of years old. Good amber is 100,000 years old. There's you could do a whole show just on what amber is and what it's about, what its imitations are, what cultural significance it has, and also the way the properties it has. It can crack if it's not old enough, and by old I mean 100,000 years old. Yes, it can have insects trapped in it, because what happens with pine sap? Things fall into it and they get stuck to it. And I've seen pictures of, just, like a scorpion embedded in there. It's like, that's the best way to view us. That's the best way to encounter a scorpion, is in a 100,000-year-old piece of amber. That's the one. If I had to encounter a scorpion in person, that's the way I'd choose to do it. But amber, yeah, what can I say? And the hole goes through just the skinny part at the top, the pointy part at the top. So somebody obviously chose to cut it that way, to feature these inclusions in this manner, and to cut it in this direction. It's it's like, what do you call it? A right angle triangle. And have the hole go through the top. I mean, what if you had the hole going through the long end, or this end, or the pointy part on this end? Totally different scene. You'd get a much different effect. Here's another one. Why? Because if I can afford to, I buy more than one. What can I say? clear beads just because, I don't know, they made it into the pile somehow, and can't go wrong with clear beads. This came from this actually fell off of a necklace that had several of these as tassels. These are, I think, Job's tears, natural materials, a literal seed bead. And they're interspersed with, oh, I can't see it too well, can I? Let's see. Oh, well, in any case, you'll see it down here. They're interspersed with striped seed beads. And they came from a necklace that I found at a Portland, Oregon estate sale in the early 2000s. But indications were that this person had traveled to West Africa, possibly in the early 1960s. So that's where I'm thinking it came from. What can I say? And it's a wonderful inventive use of the seeds. And there's another, let's see, another seed bead on there. So it's really fun. It's fun to see the way people use things. And yes, I'm leaving it on the original fishing line type nylon thread. I can take it off there, but I kind of like to have this as a reference to see how it was originally deployed or used. These I've been saving for, for last in this pile, in part because they're very unique and kind of I was glad I was there when it was happening kind of situation. These are glass beads made by Howard Newcomb of Newcomb Porcelain. Howard Newcomb was possibly one of the earliest members of the Portland Bead Society in Portland, Oregon in the 1980s and the early 90s. And I met him when he and his then wife lived in Portland, and he was in the basement making porcelain beads, and she was up in the second floor putting out a newsletter. Trying to remember the name of it. It was a newsletter concerning seed bead work, basically. Her name was Alice Shearer, and she currently is I believe, the treasurer for the Beads, the Journal of the Society of Bead Researchers. So being in Portland in the Bead Society in the late 80s, early 90s was a really fun privilege for me. And their home happened to be between my house and my workplace, so I would stop there periodically. I credit Howard with teaching me his setup for photographing necklaces. Pardon the camera making funny moves there. And I credit Alice with introducing me to the work of Joyce Jane Scott. Now, when I first got into seed beads, or when I first got into beads and joined the Bead Society, I was into big beads and trade beads, which I still am. However, it was when I was introduced to the work of Joyce J. Scott that I dove into seed beads with both feet. So back to Howard. Howard created his own versions of chevrons. These are porcelain, not glass. Very interesting things. And you'll notice too that he had, the common thing about chevrons is they have a pointy or star-shaped core going back and forth, like a rod with a hole going through it the long way. And that rod has points on the outside. And when you slice that rod perpendicularly, to the length of it, you end up with beads that have these pointy parts on it. And if you want to build up on the points, you basically add outer layers to that initial pointy rod. So that's what he was doing with these porcelain beads, which is a really unique proprietary thing that basically he came up with. He was also he took something that was kind of what was it? The best way to describe it is if you combine a typewriter with a sewing machine, and he would have slabs of porcelain clay, and he would have the machine that he basically built, stamping out tiny, tiny, tiny little beads, of which I wish I had a sample right here. But he also branched out into these more interesting porcelain beads. Only problem is they're so labor intensive that, you know, it's a pretty specialized market for people who want to spend $200 on a single bead. I'll put it that way. So, but I'm really glad he made them, and I'm really glad I have a couple to show you, because they're just like historic chevrons. They're very unique. Now, let's see. Oh boy. Well, why don't I just bring some more people to not do people beads to the party here. It's a lucite cabochon with a quaint pastoral scene on it. Hear that? That's plastic, not glass. By contrast, hear that? That's glass, not plastic. That should be glass. If I tapped it against my teeth, that would be, you'd hear it. Not all glass sounds the same, but this is another one of those fabulous lattice work beads in two tones, so two colors. And that's where kind of there's this kind of pinkish purple on here. That's where I bring the wonderful black and near black colors into the pink tone. This is a little more, this is another very interesting odd glass bead, lampworked wound, and just kind of a fun batch of colors. Anything with texture in it is my friend. More of these. A contemporary shell with a hole in it that makes it a bead, pendant bead. One of these wonderful South Asian components, you know, inexpensively made, but wonderfully detailed. A portion of a broken necklace. Love that broken jewelry, don't you? From possibly the 20s or 30s. It's got that Art Deco look. At the profile, let's see. There we go. The profile is interesting. So, you know, that could be a part of a necklace. I've incorporated existing broken necklaces into necklaces that I've made before with the seed beads. I'll discuss that soon. This and this, these are probably from Murano, near Venice in Italy, from the probably first half of the 20th century. Lots of work here. If you look closely, let's see if I can like get it. Yeah, you can see it now. Each one of those little things around the dot is a cane that was twisted. Let's see, clear plus white, drawn out and twisted, so it was like a little miniature candy cane, and then those little miniature candy canes were melted onto this glass disc once it was formed. So the amount of work that went into those was way intense. This has a similar thing going on. It also has that, let's see if we can get it to focus. Not as much. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Yeah, little bits of candy cane twists stuck on there. And it's just kind of wild. I mean, the amount of work that goes into it is mind-boggling. But hey, they had a market for it. People were willing to buy, pay good money for them back in the day, and made it worth their while. It kept them in business, kept their families fed. What can I say? And also, it basically from the medieval times, they had guilds where with apprenticeships where you could learn to do this. Now they have people in both Italy and Czech. Czech in particular, I know has basically what we would think of as trade school, but also kind of a blend of a trade school and an art school where they're working with glass. They know all the properties of glass and they make art out of it. And it goes back to the Middle Ages, this working with glass and this knowledge of how to work with glass. So these are, roughly 100 years old, probably, at the most, I'm thinking. Now, this is back to ceramics. This is the kiln-fired, let's see, what is it? The raku kiln-fired ceramic bead that this one guy made. And I don't recall his name. I was given this as a gift by my husband. And this is one that I made with a different type of clay and a different type of actual glaze, not raku, but I just took my fingernail and carved an eyeball into it. Let's see if I can get a good. It's kind of hard to see. It's somewhat abstract, but I'm carving an eyeball with the part that like an eyebrow over it. I don't have too many of those left. This is plastic, and I have no shame about plastic when it's cool. What can I say? I think it's cool enough. Plastic goes into my box. But a few more of these guys. Some more of these are wonderful. I use these in a herringbone panel piece that I made, and I'll have to bring that out and show you one of these days. This is natural stone, I believe. It's pretty old. I don't know how old, but fairly old. It's probably made to look older than it is. Here's another one of those wonderful clasp thing, the one half of the clasp that I don't have the other half of. This is glass that imitates carnelian, and it was part of the beads that were traded to places in different countries in North Africa who thought they were cool, and then traded from people coming from usually some of the West African countries over to the US in the 1980s and 90s. And this is I'll have to show you this away. Focus, baby, focus. It's a Buddha bead, and what happened, you find a lot of these in glass still. They're from the 1920s when there was a fascination. People were bored with European stuff. The Europeans, I should say, were bored with Europe stylistically, and people like Picasso were looking to places that had been colonized for inspiration, and places that were not like at home for these people. And also around the same time, especially in the 1920s, there was huge publicity around the archaeological digs in Egypt. And so there was this kind of oh my gosh, we're fast, as long as it's far from home, we're interested in it. And one of the things that was interesting to people at the time, and now of course, was the notion, these cool Buddha figures. This one is actually made out of porcelain. Howard Newcomb, again, I wish he had done a ton of these, but I think I have possibly 3 of them that he did in different colors. And he simply bought one of the existing antique Czech glass Buddha beads and made a mold out of it and put porcelain in the mold for a change of pace. So so he could get his own color schemes going. And what can I say? Speaking of color schemes, this is actually originally the joiner for a bolo tie or a string tie, and it's another moss agate piece. So I might, pop this off when I'm ready to use it. It has a hole going through it naturally. Let's see here. See my finger through that hole? So that could be strung as a bead or a pendant, and it could be done as a cabochon. I'm thinking I should bead around the irregular surface and then make a beaded leap without covering up too much of this great moss agate into that hole, and have it do something like that, when I get enough time. How that goes. These are from South Asia, possibly India, or they're kind of like Tibetan jewelry shapes, I believe, and they're wood. So I will be careful with them when I use them, because they're carved. I may as well show it close here. Kind of hard to see. Oh, to see through it. Now you can see through it. So they're carved, and they're kind of carved delicately. So got to treat them like that. I don't want them on the bottom of the pile once I get to that bottom of the pile. More Italian lampworked glass beads, possibly from the mid 20th century. I have a little blurb, another video where I discuss the glitzy stuff. I forget, I'm blanking out on the name now, but that goes into these. So that's one of the first videos I made. So scroll down and check that out. There's even a link to an article about those. And when in doubt, get a skull bead, especially if it's made out of pyrite. When I was about 8 years old, focus please. When I was about 8 years old, my family and I were on a camping trip. I wandered out in the woods and I found a pit with a bunch of shiny gold looking things in it. And I thought, wow, we're rich, for about 2 seconds. And then I realized this is a public camping area. If it was real gold, somebody would have snagged it by now. So I quickly realized that I had not discovered a giant pile of gold. It was pyrite, just like this guy that hopefully will be, let's see. Here we go. Hopefully be in focus in a minute. But, there you go. When in doubt, carve it into a skull and put a hole through it. And of course, your own skull, 50 years from now, if I don't get cremated, my skull will be a bead, by the way, because it'll be a shell with holes in it. More wood. This is exquisitely carved. Come on, baby. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Focus me. Focus sesame. There you go. All I had to do was talk to it in low tones, and there it goes. No idea how old it is. Looks pretty funky and not new. Hard to say. Love it anyway. Love it old or new. Very fun. It's not exactly with the theme, but it kind of, I could see using these together. They're clearly roughly the same size and kind of nubbly and gnarly. A bead, cloisonne. This is deviating a little from the color script. Too bad. These are glass cabochons from, here we go, from probably the very, very early 20th century. I bought I either bought them or was given them by Jeannie Bard, who recently died. She was a bead store owner in Newport, Oregon, who had a store in the 80s and 90s and was just legendary. She put on art shows. She had a very unique approach to having a store. She would give you a today present because it's today and she feels like giving you some beads just for the sheer pleasure of giving. If you're in the Bead Society of Portland, Oregon, you can read her. I wrote a eulogy for her. It's in the most recent February 2023 newsletter. I could do a whole show just on Jeannie Bard, but I'll leave it at that for now because this is like bead stash. I'm not going to go through every bead in here. That would make for a extraordinarily long video that you may, hopefully you would have time, but you might not want to take the time to see. So I will almost save the best for last kind of situation. I will talk about this guy, then I will talk about these two. And let's see here. This is a belt buckle. Again, another partial belt buckle. This is actually theoretically complete. It has all the hardware. The hardware is very patina because it's close to 100 years old as well. It's from the Czech Republic. A bead store where I used to teach in the Seattle area had an owner who was truly great, Kathy Dannerbeck. The place was named Beads and Beyond, and boy, did she go beyond. She ended up leading tours to Czech Republic to visit the bead making areas and just did a fabulous job of it. And she ended up buying out a button factory that also had things like this, belt buckles. This is glass, hear that? Glass. And she had she literally had packing crates full of beads and buttons. Last time I taught at her store before she turned it over to somebody else, to another store owner, she let me paw through them a little bit, and I found this, and she said, yeah, take it, it's great. As you can see, it has this big chip out of it. Well, you know what you do with chips? You bead over them. I wouldn't take these off because I don't want to potentially make another chip in the glass. But what if I use this as a cabochon and just bead it over this part? Or maybe I bead it over part of it and let that be part of the design. So, hey, if you want to, leave me a comment in the comments section and let me know what your vote is. Should I cover it entirely, or should I let some of that purposeful flaw show? Because it's kind of an interesting thing in itself. I would probably grind down very carefully, sand down a little bit of that point so it doesn't poke my beadboard too much. But that'll be fun. It'll be fun to hear what you think. It'll be fun to hear and read what you want me to do with this. So please leave a comment if you have an opinion about it. And doesn't it look like an owl? Of course it does, because one's imagination runs wild. Speaking of imaginations gone wild, there's a lady who lives a little north of me in Seattle who is justly famous as one of the most innovative users of polymer clay in the world, in my opinion. Her name is Cynthia Toops. She was featured in the first issue of Bead and Button magazine, I believe, and is represented nationwide by very, very wise gallery owners who have the good taste to include her work in their galleries. And these are two examples of things she has done with polymer clay. I'll take your attention to this one for now. Let's get that, let's see, here we go. Let's see if we'll get in focus. take up most of the screen. Focus sesame. There we go. These are little cross sections of, see how, of panes that she makes. And the ones on this end include faces and stars. And the stars is that same, similar, reminds me of those chevron cross sections, albeit in glass. The ones down here really intrigue me, because look at how she would have had to make those. She would have had to make layer upon layer of two colors, and then make them much smaller, and then combine them in a twisted fashion, and then slice the cross sections. So this is very fun, and as you can see why she's popular. I can anyway, hope you can. This is possibly even more intricate, and man, oh man, I'll see if I can get this face in focus sesame. Here we go. Oh, it could be a little better. Let's see. There we go. Now, let's see if I can get it to, here we go. Now I want it to focus sesame. Maybe I'm too close, but I want you, okay, that's probably as good as it's going to get. She makes her own colors in the clay. She mixes her own colors, and then she basically takes little, how you made, how when you're 6 years old and you're given some clay to play with, hopefully. I don't know if they let kids do this anymore, but they give you a little bit of clay, Play-Doh or clay, and you make a snake out of it with your two hands. Well, she'll make a snake that is super, super ridiculously tiny, and with her two fingers. And then she will let them dry, and then she'll cut them into 2-3 millimeter lengths. And they're less than a millimeter. They're probably barely a millimeter. That looks good now. Barely a millimeter wide. And she has them in different shades. See how she has this woman with pigtails, and she's got light and dark areas on her skin. She's got light and dark areas on her clothes. And you can see how many colors she's got in this thing. It's just incredible. She has to use tweezers. She actually once, I believe she was trained originally to grind lenses for glasses, make your prescription lenses. Well, she put the skill to much better use in this artwork, as you can see. She takes these tiny, tiny things and tweezes them into place and embeds them in a body of clay, which she also, as you can see, she textured up, probably with a needle. And oh, don't want that. I want the background in focus. I want this in focus. And let's see here. There we go. This will get in focus in a sec. Thanks for your patience with my focus sesame. Focus sesame. Here we go. All I had to do is say focus sesame. These are slightly bigger slices, but they look like there's one right, let's see, right here that looks like it's a stripe. It's got a stripe unto itself. So she's got just a huge library of these little tiny, ultra tiny bits. I mean, you can see, this is my thumb and forefinger, right? You can see how tiny it is. She embeds them. She makes them look really cool. She chooses her colors in beautiful, really fun ways. I'll have to ask her. I'm going to see if I can interview her one of these days. Ask her if she is self-taught regarding color theory and so on, or whether she has an art school background that included that. Whatever it was, it fell on fruitful ground, as you can see. So, as you can see, I kind of left the saved the best for last. This is the rest of the box. It's got, you know, fun, interesting things, more trade beads, because, you know, more trade beads are more fun. More trade beads mean more like what was going on in that time period. This is a Howard Newcomb a bead that was the end of the cane. So one of the colors didn't quite make it to the end, as you can see. Like that end, come on, baby, looks normal. But this end did not include all the colors. So in any case, so he actually gave me that one because it was considered flawed, but I don't consider it flawed. It has a hole in it. How could it be flawed? On that happy note, I could go on for days just about this tray. I probably did, I don't know, but I'll leave you with that happy thought. If it's got a hole in it, I'm happy with it. And let's see, I'll figure out how to undo the screen share. Let's see. Oh, I'll do this. I'll hit stop share at the top of the screen. Okay. And I'll just leave you with just some gratitude for taking the time to watch this video, because God knows that we often are hugely busy and have a little difficulty in taking time for ourselves and just taking time to simply enjoy things. I mean, I could have told myself, I could chastise myself, as I often do, for not doing beadwork during, when I was doing this video. I was just playing with my beads. Oh, look at this. Oh, look at that. But, but I will not chastise myself, because I am not ashamed to just have fun once in a while. And I hope you can do that too. So on that happy note, I will finally stop talking. Take it easy, everybody. Bye.